our first lesson from Corinthians really shakes my soul. If I speak in the tongues of humans and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Second lesson is from John. And it looks at where we're heading as we move into the Easter season. They took Jesus from Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so as to avoid ritual defilement and to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusations do you bring against this man?" They answered, "If this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law." The Jewish leaders replied, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death he was to die. Then Pilate entered the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom does not belong to this world. If my kingdom belonged to this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, "What is truth?" After he had said this, he went out to the Jewish leaders again and told them, "I find no case against him."
This is a very special day for me, and hopefully a good day for all of us. The sun's still out, and hopefully we'll be headed towards the truth. And I want to share with you some of those things. Now, when Pastor Jeff Spencer asked me to talk about science and religion and truth, I thought, well, that's a little bit like asking Huckleberry Finn to give his first church sermon. But Huck was never one to shy from a challenge, and that could be his alcoholic pap, his father, the king and the duke, Miss Watson, the widow of Douglas. Now, there are some who said that Huck joined the Hereafter Club. Now, this may sound like heaven, but it's different. Many of us belong to this club. I joined not long ago, and the Hereafter Club is where you walk into your house and you say, "I knew I came here after something." Was it my keys, my wallet, my cell phone? I know I came here after something, and Huck belonged to the Hereafter Club because he was always looking for Jim. And he helped to free Jim from slavery in his own special way. Today, I want to come here after the truth as much as I can. So I'm going to mention words from Einstein. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. My dear friend B. Newell told me that I should try to define science. And, science is briefly the discipline that is based on observation, experimentation, and critical logic. On the other hand, religion is a worldview based on revelation, sacred texts, and moral teaching. So let's see this morning if we can try to find the truth. And I'll start just by mentioning that if you go back to 1925 in Dayton, Tennessee, they questioned whether it would be appropriate to be teaching evolution in a high school. And the town at that time was having economic troubles, sort of like many of us today. So they decided, well, let's put on a big trial, and that'll bring the people into town. And so they brought Clarence Darrow as a defendant, and they brought in William Jennings Bryant as the prosecutor. And the end result of all that, unfortunately, Darrow lost and was charged $100, which was never paid. Interestingly, even today, it wasn't that long ago that Jim Allison was not able to go to a high school where they could teach evolution. So he left that high school, and he made his way through education and colleges. He ended up at Cal Berkeley, where he determined how the immune system could basically manage and take care of cancer. And he got a Nobel Prize for that. So clearly, sometimes it does help to have a strong understanding of science. Let's see. As I mentioned, William Jennings Bryan won the trial, but this trial goes on today. What is the truth? And if you go back with science, of course, some people say Francis Bacon was really the father of the Enlightenment and science, but I think most of us will probably identify more with Isaac Newton. Isaac Newton was a polymath, mathematician, physicist, astronomer, alchemist, theologian, author, and inventor. He was also very irascible and competitive. He was a bad teacher. While he was in charge of the Mint for England, he actually prosecuted 28 offenders, one of which was hanged. So Newton was a tough guy, but he had two very creative years, during which time he came up in 1687 with the Principia. And that included the law of inertia. I won't go into too many details, but he noticed how this apple dropped from a tree and it didn't go up, it didn't go sideways, it came straight down. So he wanted to understand and came up with these laws. Another was his law of acceleration. Where's Ron Adamson? He can explain a lot of this better than I can, but I want to come to the law of action and reaction. To me, this is the most fascinating. If you think about today's world, there's, for every action, there is also an equal and opposite reaction. So if you look how we sort of are retreating from science today in many of our government actions, the pendulum will swing back. And it may swing back even further or hopefully in a smooth way. If you look at the blue states and the red states, the pendulum tends to swing back and forth in this country, but we hope it's going to swing in the right direction. Now, another well-known scientist, of course, is Charles Darwin. Darwin did a voyage from 1831 to 1836 known as the Voyage of the Beagle, and he noted many geologic phenomena as well as fossils of the early animals. He saw manifestations of evolution in the changes of the beaks of the finch. He came basically from that first trip that he made to write The Origin of Species, and from much of that we now gather our understanding of evolution and in particular survival of the fittest, or even more so, adaptation. Now Darwin had many ailments after these travels, but he was able to pursue his writing. He got married, he married Mary, and between them they had 10 children. 2 of them passed away in early birth, and then he had one child that died at age 10, but he was very devoted to his children. And where's Bill Pileski? Some of you will recognize. I was very fond of Darwin, so that's my dog Darwin, and she's standing, as you might guess, on a boat named the Beagle. And we explored the Delta for several years. And, my daughter tells me I have a very bad case of ADD, but I think she's wrong. I think I had NDD, which is nature deficit disorder. So I solved a lot of that on the Delta, and I think it helps all of us. And Pastor Jeff often speaks towards that and the value of being in nature. Well, certainly Darwin saw an amazing amount of nature when he did The Voyage of the Beagle, and it was just an extraordinary book to read that is probably, I think, the most fun of all the books that he wrote. So I wanted to give you a little background on him, but I'll move next to a scientist we'll all recognize. Now, Einstein, his parents worried a lot about him. They thought he had a learning disability. He was very slow to talk. But they gave him a compass when he was 5 years old, and that compass just commanded his curiosity and his fascination. So by the time he was 12, he had already taught himself algebra, calculus, Euclidean geometry. His love was so great that when he was 12, he was confident that nature could be understood as a mathematical structure. The thing about Einstein, sometimes we're challenged, with his theory of relativity. Energy equals mc squared. The power of this equation is that when you use the speed of light squared, and basically with this equation, we came to understand that mass equals energy, but even very small changes could release tremendous power. So through that, physicists and engineers were able to create the atomic bomb and nuclear weapons, and Einstein did not ever create those weapons himself, but his theory somewhat led to them. And for that, like Newton, he had 2 very, very powerful years of creation. And during those couple of years, that's when he came up with all of the things that you see above, the photoelectric effect, Brownian motion, and the theory of relativity. He became quite famous. And, so when he came to America, he left in 1939. He was an Ashkenazi Jew and had to leave Germany and came to America. And so he was very popular. And people are always trying to take photos. So one time he decided he would show them his tongue. But I want you to all understand that, any one of us could be like Einstein. How could that be? So one day Einstein had to give a lecture to a very large assembly of scientists in a large auditorium. And so as he was getting ready, his chauffeur came. And his chauffeur, oddly enough, looked just like Einstein. He had long, kind of flowing hair. And the chauffeur said, "Oh, Dr. Einstein, I'm so honored to be in your presence. You're the most intelligent man ever." And Einstein said, "No, actually, you're just as intelligent as I am." And of course, the chauffeur said, "Well, how could that ever possibly be?" And Einstein said, "Don't worry, I'm going to show you how. I'm going to prove this." So he says, "What I want you to do now is I'm going to have you wear my clothes, and I'm going to wear yours. And when we get to the auditorium, you're going to find that there are 3 blackboards just filled with equations. All the equations that I needed to mathematically prove that energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. And the chauffeur was like, well, Dr. Einstein, I don't think I could ever do that. He says, no, you will, and it'll be fine. It's going to be, all you have to do, you just stand up there and you say, look, here's the mathematics. I've proven it. It's really quite simple. Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. And so it came to pass that they drove to the auditorium, and the chauffeur took his position in front of the blackboards, and Einstein was sitting way, way up in the galley. And he was nervous, but he said, I'm really pleased that you're here today, and I'm about to explain to you one of the great, great equations of all time. And it's really quite simple. You can see from the blackboards, all the math is there. It's quite elaborate, but it leads you to the simple truth, and that is that energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. And of course, in every audience, there's always somebody who asks a question. There's always a wise guy or a wise woman that says, oh, well, excuse me, Dr. Einstein, but on that first blackboard, there's some quantum mechanics and the math is really not all that well defined. Would you mind explaining that? So he looked up at this fellow and he says, I can't believe you asked that question. That is so simple. That is so obvious. Even my chauffeur could answer that. Now, another really remarkable scientist, probably all of you are familiar with Stephen Hawking. Hawking, at age 21, developed amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It progressed slowly, and after some decades, he was no longer able to use his hand to control his wheelchair. So the only way he could communicate was through a single motion of his cheek in order to communicate to his audience. He was an English theoretical astrophysicist, cosmologist. He was the author and director of research at the Center for Theoretical Cosmology and the University of Cambridge. And I've always liked some of his statements. This one, he says, well, we are just an advanced breed of monkeys on a minor planet of a very average star. But we can understand the universe, and that makes us very special. And success is creating artificial intelligence would be the biggest event in human history. Unfortunately, it might be our last, unless we learn how to avoid the risks. Most of all, I like this statement. However difficult life may be, or may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed. And Hawking really was incredibly successful. He went on to write a host of books, and you see him there receiving an award for President Obama. He went flying in the galactic and experienced weightlessness. And he really was productive all through his last years. He passed away at age 76. Now, we talked a little bit about the beginning of the universe, and I forget who, someone just asked me, well, how old is the universe? And I had, that was you, Ron, and in one of Hawking's books, he talks about a woman where a lecture is being given on the universe, and she looks up at the speaker and says, what you've just told us is rubbish. The world is really a flat plate supported on the back of a giant tortoise. The scientist asked, well, what's a tortoise standing on? And she replied, you're very clever, young man, very clever, but it's turtles all the way down. So I hope to finish all these books by the end of the day, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'll get there. Another scientist that I have read and really have been impressed by is the biologist E.O. Wilson. He passed away several years ago, but he wrote a lot about, he was an entomologist and quite famous for his writings on bees and on ants. And I know we have a few beekeepers here. John, I know you're out there, and Bill, and several of us. Ron, you were a beekeeper. This helped my nature deficit disorder, and also helped me to understand a little bit about how things happen in a superorganism. So I was so impressed that I actually had to write a book about wild bees myself, but I recommend his books over mine. So I'm talking a lot about science, but where is truth? Is truth in science or is it in religion? I love these words. I'm paraphrasing from Gabor Mate, who's a very well-known Canadian psychologist. And he speaks these words that the scientific method has been used to exclude essential knowledge human beings have struggled over hundreds of generations to gain. The knowledge that we are not all just molecules that accidentally have come together to form our bodies, the thoughts that temporarily engage our minds, the feelings that agitate or soothe us from the moment to the next. So scientific have we become that our science has come to ignore or deny the work and experience of the greatest teachers of humankind. One of them for me was Mahatma Gandhi. And he awakened me in my final years of college. I had struggled as a young man, determined to become a pilot. I was serving as a midshipman in the Navy, but it was during the time when we were bombing Cambodia. And I knew I could never participate in what I thought was a civil war in Vietnam. So I resigned from the Navy and I began to read Gandhi's writing. Instead of Vietnam, I went to Nepal, where I still work today. And I did agriculture. Now, as you know, Gandhi was assassinated. And at the same time, before that happened, he taught the principles of nonviolence, which were satya, which is truth, graha, which is insistence. And he maintained how important it is that if you don't have assertive action towards nonviolence, you won't achieve your goals. And he actually did achieve getting the oppression of the British Empire out of India through his work with ahimsa, or nonviolence. To this day, I'm still incredibly influenced by him, but even more so, someone who admired his work was Martin Luther King. And I often struggle, as I think all of us do, the sadness and the loss when he was assassinated. And with all the oppression and all the struggle that he went through for civil rights, I always remember one thing from his books, which is to say, when you're struggling with somebody like Bull Connor, who's about to release the dogs and beat people down with billy clubs, you have to find a way to communicate and work to make your nonviolence work. And he said part of that was always try to find, with your enemies, try to find their strengths and see if you can work with their strengths. And to me, that was profound and very powerful. His last words, before he was assassinated, he knew his time had come. He knew he would not live long. And so he told someone before he was giving his last talk what state were we in? You all probably remember, yeah. Well, he said, please do this hymn, Take My Hand, Precious Lord. And when you come to truth, Sandy said it so beautifully, and I think I would like to say that I've struggled to understand the teachings of Christ all my life. I continue to struggle every day. When we speak the truth, it becomes alive as much today as when Jesus walked on the planet 2 millenniums ago. And you heard these words, but I'll repeat them just once more. You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. I love these words that Andrew's saying, which are, and now faith, hope, and love remain. these three, and the greatest of these is love. I promised that as I stood here, I would try to move us towards the truth, and I don't want to let you down. Some of you I know are in the Hereafter Club, many of you are not, but I'm going to ask your help for a moment. I think we're very blessed in this congregation to have Andrew Bessler and Lynn and the choir. They're really extraordinary, and I think they will take us to the truth. So I asked if we could just sing an old gospel song. It's one that's very near to my heart, and it sort of goes like, I got shoes, we got shoes, we all God's children, and we all got shoes. When we get to heaven, gonna put on our shoes, we gonna walk all over God's heaven. Heaven. Andrew, I know you can do this better.
I thought you were doing a great job, actually.